Okay, so if you're a landlord at the moment, chances are you've at least thought about selling up. Maybe quietly, maybe dramatically, maybe after reading yet another headline telling you the world is ending and buy-to-let is apparently on life support. So if you do decide to sell, there's one big question you've got to answer, and that is, do you sell with vacant possession, which sounds simple until you remember the Renters' Rights Act has entered the chat, or do you sell with tenant in situ, keeping the rent coming in and hand the whole thing over to another investor? So what used to be a fairly straightforward exit has become a bit more of a strategic minefield, notice periods, restrictions, and enough legal detail to make even the most confident of landlords suddenly develop an interest in gardening. Now, this is the coping mechanism, and if you're thinking of selling up without losing your mind, this one is for you.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Did anyone just hear that slander on gardening?
I want
Did
to know
you
what's
hear
wrong
that?
with gardening.
No, it was just
No, I
First
want
thing-
to know what's
No,
wrong
I'm
with
not
it. If
interested in
you've
that.
got a crux to bear,
First-
then
first thing
You
that
bring
came
it
to
on.
my head, and you're talking without being introduced. So I'm today with
I
Annie
like gardening.
and Simon, and we're going to get into this properly. The pros, the pitfalls, the practicalities, and which route actually makes sense depending on your own situation. So, Si,
Please,
back.
can you
Yes.
introduce yourself, including your desire, your high desire for gardening?
My desire for gardening. My name's Simon Joyce. I've just gone over 30 years in the industry yesterday. Thank
Well
you.
done. Well done, Si.
Yeah, don't jump up and down at one point. That's fine. Gardening, it's my hobby, you know. I wax and wane about it. Lovely allotment. Grow my own veg and fruit. Talk to my veg. The only things that talk back to me, so it's all good. But no, it's all very good to be back. It just seems to everything changes every time I come on one of these. It's just fairly few.
Do you know
Don't
what else
why.
has changed since you've been here?
Hairstyle.
Not yours. The set has changed.
Set's
you
lovely.
noticed?
Yeah, it's very nice. Very doggy, sheepy, ramified. Yeah, it's orangey. Yeah, lovely.
Animal based.
Yeah, animal based, animal and plant based. I like that, animal and plant based.
So you've made a really good point. I think I'm not going to list what's changed since last time you're on. It's just mad. So, you know, landlords used to have a fairly simple exit strategy, and now it's more like a puzzle. So before we get into the how, let's talk about the why. So, you know, why are landlords selling, and are we seeing more landlords thinking about selling? How are you finding it, Si?
Combination really, I would say. Changing tax relief, tax changes, mortgage rates. Then we've got the Renters' Right Act, that little thing that's coming up shortly.
Yeah, let's just
That one.
quickly. So this is the 20th of March. We're recording this.
Yep.
So what's that? 31 days, 41 days, 41 days to go.
Yeah, and I think some landlords have just said to me, you know, had a good run. I'm out. And it seems to be that way for some.
Same with you? Conversations?
Yeah, I think it's a bit like probably how agents felt when the tenant fee ban came in. It was a bit like, you know what, I'm just going to take this opportunity, I'm gone. But as we found with the Tenant Fees Act, it changes things. It doesn't necessarily ruin everything. So I think, as you've seen from previous episodes anyway, I like to remain quite positive. We were laughing before we started filming. And Simon said you have to get a positive out of every situation, and it's the same concept. But I think a lot of landlords are considering selling. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the decision that they're ending up on. Quite a few are actually deciding against it as well. So yeah, mixed bag, I think. I agree with you, Si.
Yeah, I mean, the headlines: mass exodus, buy-to-let's dead, landlords fleeing the market. But, you know, a lot of the properties that landlords are selling are going to other landlords.
Yeah.
And a lot of the properties they're selling, it's about refreshing their own portfolios. So sell one, but buy another.
Yeah.
So net gain or net loss, none. But, you know, we're here to talk about selling. So once that decision to sell is made, that's where the real question comes in. Do we want it vacant or with the tenant still there? So let's talk about option one, which is selling with vacant possession, which basically means the property is empty when the buyer completes. So no tenant, no belongings, no half-built IKEA furniture in the bedroom. And historically, I'm assuming, Si, this has been the preferred option.
Yeah, I'd say there's two main reasons really. I think the first one is obviously a bigger buyer pool. You're throwing it out to not only your investors but your first-time buyers, your families. So it increases obviously more potential buyers that way. And secondly, potentially a higher price. I think if you're throwing it out there again, it tends to sort of get into the pool of trying to get a higher price rather than it being on the rental side.
Yeah.
I think as well, it's also, if your property is tenanted and you are wanting to then sell with vacant possession, ultimately that is that tenant's home. So another issue that we often find is that it's obviously not as easy to market when you've got a tenant in situ. It's not as easy for viewing access. It can be a bit of a tender subject depending on obviously that tenant's situation. But especially because, like you said, Si, some landlords have been in the market for years and years and years. You're talking tenants that may have been in situ for over 10 years. And I haven't even lived in my house, and I don't rent. I haven't lived in my house for 10 years. So, that's still their home. So sometimes it is just a lot easier, isn't it, to actually get that sale through with the vacant possession as opposed to tenant in situ.
There's a chunk of our portfolio which have been in there longer than 10 years. They've made the family home, the children have grown up there, subsequently may have had another family there, so it is their home. It's not just a house, it's part of their life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And let's look at it pre-Renters' Rights Act. Selling with vacant possession was pretty simple. Section 21, wait for the notice period to finish and regain possession. End of the story. But under the Renters' Rights Act, Section 1 being abolished, and now landlords are going to have to just remember, obviously, this is to get vacant possession. That's what we're talking about here. They now have to rely on a specific legal ground to end a tenancy. Now, in this case, it's grounds 1A, but that's by the by for this podcast, really. So one of the grounds is selling the property, but it's not quite as simple as it used to be. So what's happening, Si? What's going on?
No, it's not simple at all. The government have created a specific possession for grounds for landlords who generally intend to sell. First, the notice period is doubled, so it's 4 months instead of your obligatory 2, which has always been the norm. Is that right? Is it wrong? Well, that's what we're dealing with, so it's 4 months. And if you want to sell, you can't gain possession for that sort of period of time. Well, you won't be able to unless the tenant obviously counter-serves, but we're looking at 4 months at the moment. So you can expect the property back at the end of month 4. Yeah.
Not only that, we've got a
prohibitive period.
I'm glad you said that. I can never pronounce it. So what's a prohibitive period?
So essentially, from the commencement of the tenancy, landlord can't use the selling ground for the first 12 months.
So not from the start of the Renters' Rights Act?
No.
From the start,
of the tenancy.
the original tenancy started?
So, for example, if I had a tenant that was moving in today, then it'll be 12 months from today would be the prohibitive period, in respect of the fact that the Renters' Rights Act comes in on the 1st of May. So obviously if you've had tenants in there for years and years and years, that period actually doesn't apply, but it is something to consider for anyone that's having a changeover of tenancies at the moment.
Okay, so just an example. So we sign a tenancy, or a tenant moves in after the 1st of May. So the earliest a landlord can serve notice is going to be the first day of the 9th month, because what that does, you've got your 12-month prohibited period and you've got your 4 months notice. So serving on the first day of the 9th month
means the expiration of that notice comes outside of the 12-month period.
So those two sort of coincide basically at the same time.
Were you trying to clarify then or confuse it?
I've confused myself.
I'm confused now.
Yeah. I think everything's fine. So you have the 12 months. Obviously, give it in the 9 months. Give it on the 9th month. Gives you the 4-month period. It just means that it expires after the 12-month period. It's just go off 12 months from the tenancy start date, basically.
Okay.
And you've got to sell after that point.
But it doesn't stop there.
No.
We also have a restriction after possession is granted. So if the landlord regains possession of the property using the intention to sell ground, which has got to be proved, but we'll talk about that in a minute, they can't just change their mind because there is a restricted reletting period. So in other words, what that means is if you remove a tenant because you said you were selling, you can't immediately re-rent it for 12 months. Yeah?
Yeah.
That's nice, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
So it's obviously designed to stop landlords using the ground, getting rid of the tenant and then banging it straight on the market again. But
it's to prevent the landlord using that as the loophole, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's the main one. Whether that's right or wrong, I've had conversations with landlords saying, well, genuinely wanting to put the property on the market, doesn't sell. It's property falls, which, let's face it, what is it? We're still 1 in 3 fall. So, and that restrictive, get my words out, restrictive period, they can, it sits there empty, whilst there's obviously bills being paid, council tax, empty care insurance.
So the reason for the sale not happening is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Effectively.
Yeah.
And we've got plenty of penalties as well, haven't we? If and for agents and landlords, if they try and relet the property within that restrictive period, if the sale doesn't happen, serious penalties.
Yeah, I think it's one of the major changes with the Renters' Rights Act is obviously local authority powers have already changed as of December 25, end of December 25 anyway. But the financial penalties, the ability to actually impose them, and the fact that they are actually policing it quite heavily. So yeah, they are pretty hefty fines that they're able to impose should they wish to do so.
So obviously from all that, the risk element is increased massively if you're trying to wait for vacant possession. We've got a whole raft of legislation to follow if we want to sell our investment property, and any other risks.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes back to the time, doesn't it, and how long it drags on. Your void costs, the costs associated with it being void, I've already said, council tax, your empty care insurance, all the rest of it. Landlords don't live anywhere close by. You've also got that concern as well. So again, you've always got that. And then refurbishment costs, like we've just said, lots of these tenants have been in there not just 6 months or a year, they've been in there 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And within that period of time, the likelihood that any landlord's been able to do any refurbishment is very minimal. You don't want to destruct the tenant. You don't want to, obviously, especially in major things. So a lot of these properties are, looking quite tired or needing quite a amount of work's done to them. So you've also got that to build
it's
in
important.
mind as well. It's not just a lick of paint. Let's hide a few walls and a lick of paint. You're looking at some serious issues.
And you're not just talking about any potential damage that's been done. You're just talking about long-term wear and tear, aren't you? Properties need upgrading. It's not repaired. It's
and if you don't do the essentials, then someone's always going to come along and chip you down on your sale price. So you've got to do a certain amount to get it to a presentable situation where at least you're making something from it.
Well, it sounds like a nightmare selling with vacant possession. So let's quickly move on to option 2, which is obviously selling with a tenant in situ. Now, what that means basically, obviously, is selling the property with the tenant already there, which is it's called a tenant in situ. So what's that all about then? What happens when you sell with a tenant in situ?
Well, technically, obviously, it just transfers. Sounds simple. New purchaser comes along, purchases a property, new tenant still stays in situ, exactly where they are, pays the rent, continues to be paid, and the tenancy just be given over to the new owner. Simple.
Sounds attractive.
in theory.
In theory.
Well, it is really. You know, you're getting current owners getting the rent up until the day of completion. New owner gets the rent straight away after that. There's no tenant disruption. If you are in a circumstance where they've been living there for X number of years and it is their home, you're not having to disrupt anyone. So from that side of it, it's a win-win for everyone. Sometimes it doesn't always go like that though. Obviously, you've got some properties aren't made for that side of the market.
No, that's,
Some will
that's
appeal
important.
more
Yeah.
to first-time buyers. And again, I suppose it's also the actual cost element of that, and whether the tenant can buy. That's always another option as well, which I'm sure we'll go on to. But it's on the face of it, yeah, it looks like a great option. But there are quite a few tick boxes there to make sure that all goes to plan.
Yeah. So just to summarise that, you've got instant rental income, you've got potentially less hassle,
Yeah.
and for an investor's point of view, you've also got some stats. You've got some performance stats on rental yields and tenant history, and to help a potential investor decide whether it's a good buy or not. And the biggest advantage,
Renters' Right Act negates it.
negates the Renters' Rights Act.
It
So
gets
none
rid
of
of
the
the
stuff,
prohibited periods. It gets rid of the
none of the
and all
stuff
that
we
stuff.
talked about.
It gets rid of it all.
Yep.
So again, simple concept.
It's like it never happened.
Like it never happened. It never existed. So that's always the way. It's always a simple process. You just
Bearing in
negates-
mind that the prohibitive period still starts from the start of the tenancy, not
Very
when
much so.
not when the new landlord buys the
Nope.
property and takes it over, because
No.
it is still the same tenancy. So okay, I mean, at the minute it sounds like a no-brainer. So any downsides to selling with tenants already in?
I think obviously buyer pool is smaller. You're only attracting your investors. You're not opening it up to that market of first-time buyers, as say family homes. As Annie said a few minutes ago, it depends on the property as well. If it's a bigger family home, the yields are never going to be there. It's never going to attract your investor. But it certainly goes back to your buyer pool.
I think aside from that, it is the viewings element of it, isn't it? You've potentially got tenants that maybe don't want to vacate. They're going through the stressful process of finding somewhere else, whilst you're showing potential buyers around their home. That can be it can be difficult. And as we also just mentioned a minute ago, if you are in a position where the property does need some refurbishment, and things like that, then you can't necessarily see past that when it's got other
No.
tenants'
No, I agree.
possessions and things in. So can be harder from that aspect to see what you are purchasing and things like that. But yeah, it can be difficult unless you've got that good, obviously, landlord-tenant relationship. I suppose the positive side for a tenant is they know that it's going to another investor. They're not going to lose their home. But it's still the reality of the fact that, not everyone looks at it like that. And it is still a bit unsettling, I think, when situations change.
Okay, so
Okay.
let's talk about what a potential investor would look for in a property with a tenant already in it. Where's their focus?
Where do we go? Probably 3, maybe 4. First one is your yield. Again, we've talked about it before, and we keep saying it again. Your rent's got to be in line with current market value, because if it's not, then an investor's not going to purchase it. It's simple as that. The yield's not there. You've only got one chance a year to increase your rent. After the Renters' Right Act, who knows? So it's still every year, but it's going to be a nominal amount every time. At the moment, potentially a landlord can increase it to their heart's delight, providing obviously the tenant accepts that. So your main one, I would say, is your yield as a number one. Tenant quality, I think we have to go back to that one. Are they paying the rent on time? Are they keeping the property in a good order? Are they looking after it? Are they looking for long term? And I think that's your key number 2. Number 3, where do we go? Compliance, EICR, EPC, gas, a deposit. You're going to be looking at that. And I think probably 4thly, condition. What is it actually like? Have I got to put any money into it before, in case this tenant does go, effectively after giving a couple of months notice? What am I going to have to plough back into it?
Yeah, I think it's just like it's that additional reassurance, isn't it? That actually
Yeah.
what you're purchasing, you're not at the end of the day when you're purchasing with tenant in situ, you're not just buying the property, you're buying the tenancy as well, in
Yeah.
theory. So
Yeah, you are.
when you all of those things that you're taking into account in terms of management, compliance, and obviously the longevity of that tenancy, they're all variables that are really important to consider, really.
I think when you purchase it, yes, if you're buying an investment property, you know already you've got the gas, electric, all those things there. But there's obviously some other cost implications, roofs, kitchens, all that sort of thing. You've just got to build in,
Yeah.
depending on, again, how old the property is.
Yeah.
Okay, put you on the spot. Which option's better? Vacant possession, tenant in situ.
Again, I go on an individual basis, and it all depends on sort of landlord's priorities. I think if you want maximum price, then vacant possession, simple as you're opening up to that buyer pool. If you want in speed, then probably tenant in situ. Although sometimes they can be protracted in today's sales market, but I think I would say they're your options.
I'm going to say my option is tenant in situ because I would like to retain the management. Thank you.
You mentioned about tenant buying.
Yeah,
Surely,
we come
surely,
across that
surely
quite a
that's
lot.
dream world.
Yeah, I mean that is, literal
We do
dream
get it,
world.
don't we?
We've had
Yeah.
we've definitely had a few over the past couple of years. But there are obviously variables again with that is suitability, really.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have got people that are renting as opposed to owning because that's the option that they've got. Could be credit, could be deposit, could be, there's so many variables. So yes, in the perfect world,
Taking all that out, the dream scenario, you've got no viewings, no marketing, no negotiations,
no eviction,
no hassle,
yeah,
no evictions, no Renters' Rights Act.
that is, yes, it is just a pure win-win, but unfortunately there are probably the most variables in that situation that you have to consider. But if it all lines up, absolutely perfect. And like we said, we do see it, so it is realistic.
I'm going to mention at this point because it's just popped in my head. So I think with the Renters' Rights Act, there's always going to be people out there looking for loopholes. And one I saw a couple of days ago about trying to get round this restrictive period, this prohibitive period. So we've got a guy who basically set up a limited company and sold the property into a limited company to keep the tenancy going. Then kicked the tenant out when it was in the limited company because it bypassed some of the stuff in the thing. So just trying to come up with all these different scenarios. I mean, my advice is just don't. Just you'll get stung. I mean that's just an example, but there's people trying to think of all these different ways of negating all the parts of the Renters' Rights Act, and to me it's a bit of a waste of time.
I think there always will be people trying to find a way. No, we went on to diversify, but the pet situation, and landlords say, well, when can I say no? What reasons can I use that one? Well, if I say that, and at the end of the day, as you said, you're going to get caught out. I think they're just reliant on the fact that maybe it's not going to get policed so well to begin with, and it might be a bit woolly to begin with, but when it cranks up, they're going to get fines, and they're going to think twice. But I think they'll try, and whether there's a test case or will be involved, who knows? But I think they will try.
Yeah.
That's ultimately how they will play the game.
As soon as the case law starts to be built, that's which I'm pretty sure will be quite imminently. That's usually where you find your examples. But yeah, I think trying to find loopholes in legislation and regulations, let's be honest, people will do that. They have been doing that for however long, and they will continue to do so. The unfortunate reality is that you are in a position where you've got to plan your investments a bit more than you have had to before. 4 months is a long time. A lot can happen in 4 months. That's the notice period that you're now having to give. It's just you've got to be sure of your decisions. You've got to be forward thinking, proactive, and that's just the reality of where the market's going.
It's turned into a long-term planning thing rather than a short-term, decision. Right, I'm going to sell.
Yeah.
Right. Well, obviously it's not as easy as that. So, I think just to sum this up, if you're a landlord and you're thinking about selling your investment property or properties, remember you've got two options: sell it vacant, open the door to homeowners, perhaps increase the price, or sell it tenanted and attract investors looking for income. But as Si's already said, the right strategy, I should say, depends on your own situation, the type of property, the length of the tenancy, all that sort of thing. So it's really important to, I would just get advice, get advice on what is the best way forward. So that's it. Thanks for watching another episode of The Coping Mechanism. If you want help deciding the best route for your property, the team at Cope & Co, always happy to help. On the video, subscribe. We've got podcasts coming out regularly. Share them on social media to anybody that you know that may be interested in watching it. Listen to the podcast while you're on an exercise bike or whatever. And
Enthralling.
Enthralling, yeah. Or if you want to, if you want to go to sleep at night, that's another good idea.
Listen to the Section 8 one.
Listen to the Section 8 one and you'll be asleep within a couple of minutes. So yeah, thank you, Simon. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you.
Promise it won't be too long before Simon comes back, because he's obviously getting tetchy about all this changing legislation.
What legislation?
What legislation? So yeah,
Something changing? What's changing?
we'll 41 days. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.